We're trying to, it was what, $49?
Yeah, 49 per visit.
Now we've made that no cost to the employee, so we're trying to encourage folks to use that. That could really save the employees and the plans some money if we could really get that participation rate picked up from just very minimal to even just a handful of employees.
I wasn't aware we had that until I read this about this, and when it said the cost went down from $49 a visit to $0, I wondered, so that's an out-of-pocket expense to the
Goes towards your
employee?
deductible.
Okay, okay, it still costs somebody something, it's not just a free service.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Well,
correct.
I wasn't really sure about that.
But we're trying to get
So
utilization
how
of it.
does the employee do that? They just get online themselves and put that in their browser, their Live Health Online, and
Our largest utilizer of the program, Dana can tell you exactly how to use it.
tell me about that, if you don't mind.
I don't have to actually leave work, if I just have a sinus headache and I can sit at my desk and have my phone right there, and you basically, you load the app on your phone, you plug in all your information, and you go and it tells you there's these doctors, you got like your second in line, maybe a 5-minute wait, go in, it's FaceTime with the doctor, you tell
So
them
it is a
basic-
FaceTime, I was wondering, yeah.
basic
okay.
symptoms. I've done it for sinus colds, I've done it for pink eye, I've done it for my 6-year-old who's had, well, I say a basic, stuffy nose and no other symptoms. And there was one time I did call for him, and she said, I cannot diagnose anything. You need to go see his pediatric doctor face to face.
Do you have an ID number or a password number that gets you in there that lets them know that
You
you're part of
plug
the
in, when
OMU?
you sign up and register, you plug in all your health benefit card information, your OMU ID information, you put a credit card on file. If it doesn't cover whatever, if you're on a different, it depends on the deductible or plan that you use. So you can do it anywhere. I did it when I was at Disney World 2 years ago, and found a pharmacy, and the pharmacy delivered to the resort. So.
I was sort of amazed, only 7 claims from 4 covered members, it says in
Yeah,
summary.
I'm
I would've thought
probably
that would be
3 of
more
those,
widely
probably 3
used.
of
We're
those.
gonna try to promote that this year during our open enrollment, during our health fair and our benefits fair, and really get more people to use that, because, I've not used it, and it's a good
It's
tool.
$49 versus maybe $125, and you're taking time away from home or work when you just need to.
Going into a sick environment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're going into
that's
another sick
exactly
Well,
environment.
with most people already sick, yeah.
And then there's 24/7 operation.
Yes, it is.
So if you've ever had something happen, and tried to, on a Friday at 7 o'clock, minor emergencies closed, your only option is ER.
That's right, your ER's going to be more than $125.
Well, there's no cost to the employee now. I think that utilization should go way up.
We hope so.
And just to clarify, we can make it no cost to employee on the Premier plan, but we do still have to be a cost on the HSA plan. But I think the way that we position it to employees in those meetings and getting people aware of it is that with the increased contribution on the HSA plan, you can plug in your HSA card when you set up your account. So you can still say, basically if you're on the HSA plan, you can still use this. And then it'll just pull right off your HSA account, which we're already preloading with dollars. So it's a win-win there for either plan.
Do we subsidize that? Is there a certain amount of money that costs to be part of that?
Does not.
Nothing like that, okay. Thank you.
It's an Anthem product.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Move for approval of the recommendations for the CY 2019 healthcare plan structure.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Be none.
He said aye. DJ, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana.
Yes, thank you guys. Let me know if you need anything.
Yeah, I'll do this on that.
I don't want to be like,
Okay, so, next up is IT staffing and recommendation for security administrator, and I'm gonna let Michael take the lead on that.
I'll give you a couple of points or background on this one, then we can open up the topic for discussion or any commission guidance that we might have. But cybersecurity, system security is one of the fastest growing functions within the IT department, the IT function itself. The current model that we have is we have an OMU IT department that is covering cybersecurity function with internal oversight, meaning that we're working with a lot of contractors, are using external resources. The internal oversight that we use is about 1,500 plus hours of IT staff's time, usually overtime, not paid overtime, but over the 40-hour work schedule. And then we spend about $300,000 a year in contract resources. These resources might allow OMU to cover the critical and high priorities in the issues that we find. But each manager within this organization, within OMU, is challenged during the budget season to scrub their expenses, to recommend any ways that OMU can save our customers money. Terry Horn, our OMU IT manager, approached me earlier in 2018, presented this recommendation that's on the table today. The way I see it is OMU has two options. You can continue what you're currently doing, which is outsourcing, which is costly. You could have some issues with turnover of contractors, and there's an intellectual property issue. Or you could look at the insourcing of it. So we evaluated the pros and cons, and with the growing cost of the contractors and the need of the in-house intellectual property, we felt it was a better option to create an internal, non-civil service exempt position with an estimated savings of about $100,000 a year, while still maintaining our current IT department headcount. So if I missed anything, Terry, that's kind of where we're at. We wanted to put it out there for discussion with the commission and see what kind of questions you might have about it.
So this is gonna be an exempt position?
It would be exempt from overtime, non-civil service.
Why do you not track, time over 8 hours a day, even though they're exempt?
We just don't do it with our payroll system.
Is somebody tracking that?
Not formally.
Why would you not do that? I mean, you're basing it on the fact that you're overworking employees, but you're telling us you don't track after 8 hours, and you don't know what that really means.
I think each individual manager, department, they kind of keep track informally of, of their hours. I know with production, people regularly work in excess of 40 hours a week, just on a normal basis. The only time we ever tried to keep track of them, and again, not outside the payroll system, just usually in a spreadsheet or on a pad, was when we had exempt employees who were required to work a lot of hours, particularly during outages. Just to, we would try to keep track of that, but it's not.
You don't do any kind of comp time.
We have what I'll call informal comp time at the power plant. If I'm there and Brad has to work a full weekend, or in a lot of cases a holiday weekend, then I'll let him take a couple days off to make up for that, which you never get it back one-to-one, not in the 28 years I've been here. But it's informal, it's not a company policy.
Yeah, we don't have a formal comp policy. Now, I don't know if Terry has probably an answer on that one too, as far as how they
One
track
of the things we
it.
have done, Tony, is the cost has just been exponentially growing, as we've been tracking that. We had about 1,700 hours in regular work days tracked to cybersecurity. We're doing about 900 in addition to the 8 hours. But in addition to that, we've also, our system supervisor is one that's primarily taking care of cybersecurity. Things that he's supposed to be doing is working with system administration, which in turn shows that over, and we've been exceeding between 700 and 900 hours in that area too. But what Kevin says right, if we see a problem area, we'll track it into a spreadsheet. But if it's, somebody's working an hour or two here and there, we don't track it.
And that's in addition to your consulting work that's done
Yeah,
outside.
the cybersecurity is primarily done with David Borman, our system supervisor. What we use contractors for, things like penetration testing, which they're really validating the work that we're doing inside. So we want a third party, kind of like having an external auditor do some checking. And then some augmentation, but very, very limited on that.
So you can see, even though if you add this person, you'll still use some outside consultants to do some approaches.
Yeah, our
So the
outside,
savings, 160 may be
when the,
mathematical, but in essence, it's really all of it.
yeah, and the number Michael gave you, the number, that is the estimate if we hired somebody full-time to do it with an external firm. That'd be about $302,000. So right now, we're spending on external contractors about 12 to 15,000 a year, and that's primarily to do things like pen testing, validations, things like an external auditor would use. Versus if we bring the function in-house, it's gonna be about 140,000 with benefits.
If you bring a person in, how long would it take to get a person up to speed?
If we hire somebody that's fully trained, like if we're able to get somebody from another utility, we can have somebody hit the ground right away. Otherwise, it's probably gonna take 2 to 3 years, so they're gonna have to work very closely with David during that transition.
Would that create a vulnerability in the system? In fact, they're not familiar with the utility systems, that you will need more outside consultants and take her off of them?
Not because we have David Borman, the person that's been taking care of it primarily internal, so as long as David didn't quit on me, no.
So what percent of your overall man hours could you attribute to Elmer Smith and the power marketing?
Near zero. The power marketing was handled primarily through the ACES Power Management, and then what was internal, Rob was just another employee, just like we protect Lynn's assets related to that.
What about Elmer Smith?
Elmer Smith would be, the same as us offering firewall protection. They also have their own, Brad can talk about that, they also have their own IT staff that works on that, so this would be no change, have zero impact on this position. Anything else I can answer?
Motion be approved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, next item is our renewable energy recommendation. We've been working on this, as everyone knows, for quite some time. So I want to go through that a little bit of background, how we got to where we are and what we're recommending. So as we've talked about before, as when we came with the initial part of our portfolio with the Big Rivers PPA back in June, at that time, we noted that we've been participating with KYMEA in a cooperative bidding process for renewable energy sources. That review has been completed. Everybody's probably seen the paper. KYMEA has actually signed an agreement, a power purchase agreement with Open Road Renewables for 86 megawatts. They recommended the Open Road Renewables. They signed an agreement for 54 megawatts with the Ashwood Solar One LLC. That's otherwise known as Open Road Renewables. For us, what are we looking at? And this is the same 4 points when we chose the Big Rivers contract. First is cost to our customer owners, reliability, provide certainty over whatever term we're looking at, risks and benefits to provide stable economic rates, and the quality of the experience and the stability of potential counterparties. So those 4 components of what we're evaluating on have stayed the same throughout. Just as a reminder, back when we did, this is a culmination of all the IRP work that started in 2012, and we remember that Burns & Mack did the outside review of our IRP process in 2016. They mentioned that renewable resources provide us with low-cost assets that do not have the risk associated with potential future emission regulations. If you go back and remember, one of the things we talked about is risk in addition to cost. And Burns & Mack said they have seen utility-scale wind and solar costs come down substantially. And I kind of underline this part because sometimes this gets left out. They could serve as a good complement to fossil fuel-fired resources with operational flexibility. And that's where we are. We think this is a good complement to put some diversity in our portfolio. It complements what we've already done with Big Rivers. So KYMEA had multiple bidders. They had bidders for wind, for hydro, and lots of different solar permutations and combinations. When they went through their initial screening, all the solar options really came to the top as the most cost competitive of those options. The ones that, there were 2 or 3 that really made the short list, a couple common denominators, fixed price for 20-year term, the two finalists, both were in the 80 to 86 megawatt range. And then the one that we're recommending, finally, they're proposed to be online. The solar projects were a little farther out, which works to, as we kind of phase things in the 2021, 2022 timeframe. The open order renewables is actually proposed to be online in December of 2022. So the highlights of that proposal, it was the most attractive from a cost perspective. Among the over 200 proposals, 38 different entities made proposals to KYMEA and OMU in the March 2017 RFP. It's projected to be lower, this was lower cost in purchasing, going out to the market and purchasing energy and capacity from MISO market. And also, one of the things, we got a lot of different volumes of bids. One of the things that we looked at early on were smaller solar buildings and possibly even solar that would be located for us within Davis County. And the smaller ones just can't compete price-wise. So one of the benefits of this, you get the economies of scale from an 86 megawatt facility versus small, 1 to 20 megawatt facilities. When we say it's competitive with other comparable PPAs, for us it is competitive pricing with the Big Rivers PPA that we're in. They're interconnected to the LG&E system. It is a responsible, capable counterparty with lots of experience, and the PPA that has been negotiated, both the one with KYMEA and the one with OMU, have very good, appropriate provisions. One thing I'll mention is we had options to how we structured this proposal, how we structured the agreement. One option was for OMU to have a single contract with KYMEA and a single contract with the solar provider. We have opted to have a separate PPA, so KYMEA has a standalone agreement with Open Road Renewables, and if you approve this today, we execute it, and then OMU will also have a standalone agreement. So we're not tied in any way through the agreement with KYMEA. So what does this proposed transaction look like? So it's go into operation by the December 1st of 2022. It's called the commercial operation date. We'll get 37.5% of the available output over the term of 20 years. That's about 32 megawatts, a little over 32 megawatts. And it's a very simple contract. The way the price works, the price is the same in all 20 years. So you take the price times the available energy every month, that's our monthly charge. It's fairly straightforward. We are required, when the solar energy is available, it's a take or pay. We will take that energy or have to pay for it, but solar peaks in the summertime, obviously, so it matches up with when we need energy. So we expect we will take all the megawatts this facility would generate for OMU. There are no fixed payments. There's no risk of price increase. It is a fixed price agreement for the term. But again, we must take our share of the energy, which if you look at, and I'll show a curve here in a minute, we will be taking that energy. So again, price is fixed, there's no annual escalation. It's favorable with our Big Rivers PPA. The Big Rivers PPA, we designed that to accommodate the solar energy contribution. As we talked about, Big Rivers will be scheduling our power, so as that solar comes in, they will be scheduling the power that we're receiving from them, and also with the SEPA allocation that we currently have to make sure that OMU's needs are fulfilled. The solar energy is approximately 5% of our annual customer needs. So it's 32 megawatts, but it only has about a 25% capacity factor because the sun doesn't shine all the time. So it'll be about 5% of our needs. And we have negotiated in the contract transmission contingencies, so we could terminate if we don't make we can't make the appropriate transmission arrangements. Again, why is the pricing so good? Economies of scale, it's 86 megawatts. It's about 800-acre site in Lyon County, Kentucky, so it is in Kentucky and not too far away. The start date was determined by the developer so they can take advantage of the tax credit. That really is one of the driving factors that makes this a good project for them.
When does that expire?
It actually expires, I believe, if it's not renewed at the end of this year. But by getting these contracts in place now, they're in. And then they can take, as the technology in their business is rapidly changing, they can take advantage if there's any appropriate and positive technology changes between now and startup. And again, the 20-year PPA term allows the developer to recover their costs over time and their profit. It's good for us because, as you know, the Big Rivers deal is 6.5 years. So we're trying to get diversity of our supply. So with this, we will have coal, we'll have hydropower, we'll have solar, but also diversity of the terms of our agreements. So we've got the 6.5 year, the Big Rivers term is 6.5 years. This will be 20, and then the SEPA is basically an evergreen contract that we renew that doesn't have an expiration date. So we do have now some diversity, not only of the energy supply, but of the timing of the contracts. And it's a big difference from what we have now. Right now, we have all our eggs in a coal basket, and we've been committed since 1960 to the Owensboro station for a long, long term. So that's the kind of diversity that we need as our business is changing. This is a KYMEA comparison. There are no numbers on this because the price is under a confidentiality agreement. But what it shows is that the ORR, or the solar deal here, as it compares to MISO and capacity, and then some of the other options they had. But over here, these are prices for smaller size solar bids that we had. You can see the smaller the solar, this is under 1 megawatt, the higher the price. So really the economies of scale of an 86 megawatt facility are really one of the driving factors in getting the pricing so favorable. One of the things that is in our public release, and it will be the largest solar facility in the state of Kentucky by far. The largest one right now is KU's at their Brown Station, I think is where it's located, about 10 megawatts. This will be 86 megawatts, about 800 acres. I went to Louisville over the weekend and got up on 64, Route 231. You see that little solar farm right there, 64? That's 3 or 4 acres. And we're talking about 800 acres. So that's, when you first see that, boy, that's big. But this is a real deal here. So we talked about the PPA. Some of the terms is 20-year term. It's got, I think, reasonable, normal customary provisions. Has incentives in the contract to make sure OR completes the project on time. They're required to provide OMU and KYMEA a letter of credit. This got chopped off. That has provisions for damages should they not perform on time. And again, all the development risk and the project risk is borne by Open Roads. We just are going to be paying a fixed price when the facility comes online. So here's what this looks like for OMU. The big piece of the pie in our generation mix is the Big Rivers portion. The yellow is our 5% of energy that'll be solar, and the blue is our 5% of energy that'll come from the hydro system on the SEPA power system. If you look at the other chart, our city load, you can see this is over an average from January through December. City load peaks usually July or August. The yellow line is the solar. So solar is minimal in December and January. Peaks as you could expect in the summertime. Drops off over the fall months. So the solar peaks when we need it to peak, what coincides with our summer peaks. So our recommendation, we have finalized the terms of the PPA as we did with Big Rivers, and it's been through legal review, and today recommending that the commission approve the chairman to execute the PPA that we have drafted up with Open Road Renewables, Ashwood, Solar One.
What happens if they can't supply power?
Nothing. Well, if they don't make it by the COD, by the date, their damages they have to pay to KYME and OMU. If they just never show up, Big Rivers, our Big Rivers agreement allows them to ramp up to cover that with really no impact to us other than we pay the Big Rivers payments of the Open Road payment.
Or if Open Road is open and at some point they can't provide power. We just don't get it. Right?
We just don't get it. Yeah.
I just want to know if there's any consequences.
And the good thing about our agreement with Big Rivers is because they're going to be scheduling all of our power sources, let's say, you know, we're expecting a peak day today on solar, but we have a big thunderstorm comes through and the solar drops. Big Rivers will be scheduling that. They'll ramp up the other generation sources to cover it. From our perspective, you know, Tim's guys will never see that there's any difference. But if we need 175 megawatts, it'll be there.
Is 86 is the average for a solar field. Would Big Rivers schedule just what we requested, even though the solar field generates way more than 86 on a peak day? Now, they will take as much as they can, as much as they're allowed by our contract, and we only allow our portion of that, and anything else is theirs to do.
They only have two customers, KYMEA and OMU, so they won't be selling to anybody else.
So they're gonna have more power than they need to.
They the design is 86 megawatts. So in the summertime, they'll be flowing 86 megawatts.
Or more, they should be pulling more.
Well, they may. We have, the two entities, KYMEA and OMU, have rights to whatever they flow.
Okay, I just wanna understand, you know,
And that's why-
definition of an 86.
Right.
86 average.
If it comes out at 88, that's why the percentages are in there. We get, whatever,
We get their
32, whatever
That
percent
percent
is.
is their output.
Yeah,
They'll have to do factory testing and know what the capacity is before they go commercial.
yeah,
If we were to get out of it, they have first right of refusal for all of it.
they do.
You just need to see your calculations too. of what
Oh,
you
I
figured
just,
out.
I put them in and you add them all up, and on those certain days, it'll be 40% more than what you think.
It's about, we asked them this question, about 300,000 panels on the 86 megawatt. It's a big facility. Not a lot of employees takes from a solar field, probably 4 or 5, handful of employees.
I'm just saying the sun intensity
I know, I'm.
varies. All right. You're asking an engineer a question.
I know.
That's very.
Be
careful.
Be careful what you ask for.
Be careful, we got a lot more things on the agenda.
Well, I'm really glad we're doing this, but I tell you, what makes this work is the flexibility that Big Rivers gave us in their agreement.
Absolutely.
That's what makes this work.
And I think we got a good, I think the price,
The price is extra.
The price is very good.
bidders is certainly attractive.
Yeah, next year, the price probably won't be that 30% goes away, you wouldn't see those prices.
No.
And we only pay for what we do take. We have to take it.
We have to take it, but we'll only pay for what we take.
Yeah, you don't have to pay a fixed amount whether you get it or
No.
not. I mean, so
No, there's no fixed price. It's a very simple calculation for the payment.
What happens if they come up with a way to store solar power, and all of a sudden they've got that year round? It's gonna be the same thing, because we're gonna still. be
From
able
our
to take it.
perspective, we would pay the same price for what we take. You know, if there's a way to store it and make it more attractive, that'd be good for us, but
Right.
Better buy stocking and take the store.
Yeah.
somebody figures that out, get in on that early.
Yeah.
Gates is gonna be a
Well,
place.
I'm saying in the next 20 years, that could happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It needs to.
you'll be able to charge those cars at night.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next one is, as we move toward decommissioning of shutting down Elmer Smith and decommissioning, we've talked about, you know, turnover out there is about, what, 5, 6, 7 times our company turnover. Our company turnover is very low, but if you take Elmer Smith out, so, which is expected. Our retention plan is having a positive effect, I think, but we still have needs for employees. As our window gets shorter, we need to be able to have the flexibility to bring folks in on a quicker basis and maybe bring folks in that wouldn't typically be people who you would look at for a full-time position. So what we're recommending here with this, this policy is, and I know Pat's done a lot of research on this, is the ability for us to, as a position comes open out there, to abolish that position and then bring somebody in on a temporary and special project, which is allowed under the statute, basically at the same pay rate for the same job, but the reason it's temporary because that project ends when Elmer Smith shuts down in June of 2020. So this would give Brad the flexibility to to do some things that we wouldn't typically do, maybe get some retirees back in, get folks under our agreement with a energy services provider or employee provider, without having to go through the lengthy process with civil service to test for positions and go through the hiring process. So what it boils down to is that this policy would, the commission would authorize me to make those determinations to abolish a position as it becomes vacant, declare a temporary and special project to allow HR and production to bring somebody in, and then we will report that to you at the next scheduled meeting for your ratification.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I mean, I understand why you're doing this, and I think it's a really good solution. I just, one thing I didn't quite, what defines temporary?
Well,
What's the time span?
there is no defined
Okay, so it can
definition
go.
in the statute. It's of short duration and unknown.
So whether that's
I mean,
6 months or
We know
16
it's
years?
tied to the operation of the power plant, so.
But it's by this memo, it's tied to Owensboro.
Yeah.
Right.
It would only apply to Elmer Smith.
I think it's a great solution to the problem.
Let you operate day to day without any problem.
Yeah, thanks for all the work you did on this, Pat, in your memo explaining the statutes and all. Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. The next one is again related to as we move forward and move out of the generation business. Our energy risk management policy was very specifically designed in 2008 and 2009 to apply to an ongoing business in the wholesale market with internal employees and structure. And as we are moving forward and with employee changes and vacancies, we had two options. We could rewrite that entire 100-page policy, or we could add a codicil to it, to a section that would basically allow the general manager to have authority to delegate certain functions to either existing employees or third parties, consultants, contractors, as needed as we wind out of the wholesale power market. So we tried to keep it fairly simple. That again, I would make those delegations and then report to you that we've delegated, these duties of the wholesale power market of the director of power marketing to this entity for this at this time.
So this would be a motion to make an amendment to make this modification that was set out.
Move for approval.
Second.
So you're willing to take on this extra responsibility that you're going to pick the right person?
Yeah, we don't have much of a choice.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next one is with our fairly routine we have with the state. The state coordinates the recoveries for Federal Emergency Management Association after disasters, and they need a delegate from each entity. Our delegate was Terry Nolte. We found out when they opened a new budget year that we needed somebody, we need to redo that. They did say that we could have an alternate in case as needed, so this is just a resolution on their format to delegate me as the authorized applicant and Tim as the alternate.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we've got a couple of updates. We'll start with Chris and our quarterly telecom.
Okay.
Did I come you I don't want to do your presentation. I'll be happy to give it up.
All right. Well, I want to start right off by letting everybody know that at the end of last month, we connected our 400th residential customer. So we are well on our way, and as you'll see in the graphs coming up, that is definitely a portion of our business that's taking off. Briefly talk about our commercial circuits. You can see that we've sort of leveled off a little bit. We're still having a positive net increase in circuits, but we've had a little bit more of an increase in churn. Now, I will say over the last 10 disconnects that we've had, 7 of those were related to a customer discontinuing operations, shutting down a location, or things of that nature. 3 of those were related to getting a cheaper rate somewhere else or competition. So to give you an idea of the last 10 disconnects, that's where that was coming from. The bandwidth growth, you can see that big jump right there was when the commission had authorized me to double the bandwidth for the existing commercial customers. So that's kind of how that took place. Now the math will be a little bit off because there were a few customers that didn't have the right equipment for us to be able to duplicate it, and we've been working with them to try to get it in line. Commercial voice, you can see still pretty steady. We're adding some voice lines there. And then, of course, here's residential internet that is really starting to take off. And I'll talk a little bit about the areas that we've completed and where we're going next. I can tell you that I expect to connect our 5th or 500th customer sometime next month, for sure.
To get those customers, do we actually go knock on people's doors and say, would you like to have us service?
Actually, right now, what we're doing is working through the pre-subscriber databases that we have. As I talked to Kevin a lot about the layering of all of this, there's different phases to how we go about marketing and connecting our customers. And in the initial phases, it was the door hangers and a little bit of direct mail, but mostly it was all those customers that said they wanted our service when we made it available in the area. We're now contacting them and scheduling them and working through that database. And a lot of it is just customers have heard that we're now available and they're just calling in. So we haven't had to actually spend a lot of marketing dollars to get these folks to come to us. It's been word of mouth.
We haven't had door-to-door salesmen go by,
No.
knock on the door.
No.
No.
We actually have a lot more. I think this is kind of the cream of the, skimming off the cream, if you will, because we're going to have a lot more to do later with those types of tactics, more direct mail pieces, things like that. Right now, we're meeting all of our objectives simply by getting the word out there and letting folks know that we're ready to connect them when they said they wanted to be connected. So it's worked out very well. Oh, and by the way, the absence of red there is a huge indicator that we must be doing something very right. So it's great that people are connecting to us, but not only are they connecting to us, they're staying with us. And the only times that the vast majority of times that we've had disconnects, it's because they're moving out of our service area or they've passed away. Never stopped that.
Or are they still under contract? Are they under contract?
Well, for fiber to the home, we have a service agreement. That is a 1-year agreement that if there's costs, and we spell all this out, there's costs for us to get them installed. They agree to stay with our service for 12 months in order for us to recover that cost. If they leave our service and just want to switch to someone else, they've agreed to pay the prorated portion of the cost for us to install them. We haven't really had any of those. Now, if they move out of the service area or they pass away, we don't hold them to that. It's kind of out of their control in a way. But we've had an awful lot of people move into those new homes, and because it's already connected, we're able to connect them that much easier. We don't have to go and install a new drop. Okay, so some of the biggest news was we finally completed this whole knock segment here, and that's what's allowed for that dramatic growth. So we had our pilot area here, our secondary pilot here, and now we have now completed all the construction in these areas over here. So as of about a month or 2 ago, this whole area here is now available, about 4,000, and actually that was an estimate. There's 4,500 homes that are now available for us to sell to. And then we're planning, and what you just saw on the consent agenda is now moving into sub-E, and about 3,100 more customers up there, or homes, potential customers. And that will take us through what our initial capital bonding was to build out. So we'll have to see as we get towards budgeting for next year what we want to do with sub-C, how we want to go about dealing with that. The other big news, though, was a 10 gig upgrade that we did in the network. The commission had authorized us to move forward with that. That is enormous. So let's see, let me get back to these slides here. You see our commercial committed bandwidth, right? That's 4 gigs right there of committed bandwidth. Before, you could see that prior to that, we had 2.5 gigs of bandwidth, but our primary circuit was only 1 gig. So we've had 1 gig and then a backup gig. Now we've upgraded one of those to a 10 gig. And we still have a 1 gig as a backup. So that gives us a lot of capacity now on that service to be able to not only attach a whole lot more fiber to the home customers, but also to better serve our commercial customers. And there's a slide here that I'll talk a little bit more about what we plan to do there. And then here's penetration rates. So phase 1, 2, 3, and then all areas right now, we are in the 9% for the overall service area that we have available, and almost 30% in our original pilot area. Any questions on that? Okay, so here we go. Market observations. Here's something that we have done since the mid-90s, and we still do it very, very well. Talking about the enterprise business customer. So those are the manufacturers. Those are the mid to large-sized businesses that see the value in our service. They know that it's technologically superior in most cases, so it's very reliable. They know that if something goes wrong with it, we're going to respond within minutes, not days or hours even. So they're willing to pay a little bit more of a premium for that. There are service level agreements as part of the contract. So whether it's another provider or us, we're very, very competitive here. We remain competitive. We're always looking at what other folks are doing, and we're staying right into that niche. Now, what has happened over time is these folks down here, the smaller businesses, because of, for the last few years, competitors have kind of ignored that area of the market, and especially small businesses that rely on credit card processing and things like that to keep them going. The fact that they had to wait a day or two to get service was extremely annoying to them. So they found the value in coming to us at an enterprise level to pay that premium, to enter that contract, to be with us. Now, competition has stepped up a little bit. Some of these smaller businesses are saying, well, I'm willing to forego that reliability. I'm willing to forego some of the things that I could get with a relationship with OMU because I can get a lot cheaper rate over here. And that has happened in those 3 customers that I mentioned out of the last 10 that have disconnected. So, in my opinion, we are going to obviously continue to stay very, very competitive here, looking at the competition, seeing what their rates are. That's the reason why we doubled our bandwidth before, is because we kind of got out of line with that. So we're going to continue to do that. The question is, and this is for the commission, how aggressively should we go after this small business market? And we have been looking at that actually for a couple of years and doing something similar to a fiber to the home type approach, using network access points, using existing commercial infrastructure, going in at a much lower price point, maybe with some asymmetrical speeds. Today our enterprise level, the upload and download are equivalent. The smaller business customers really seem to just want a high download rate, so maybe we provide an asymmetrical solution. Maybe we do not support static IP addresses, which is what is usually required of enterprise level customers. Because the danger here is if we get too much into this, we may lose some of this to this even more. They may want to just say, well, I'm going to get that great OMU service from you guys anyway, give me that lower rate. So whatever we develop there has to be just right for that market. And like I said, we've been looking at it for a while. It might be worth a conversation in the upcoming commission maybe to talk a little bit about the potential rates, speeds, things of that nature. That may want to entertain that in closed session, Pat. I don't know as far as the competitive nature of that discussion. Anything you want to discuss about commercial?
Well, just in general, I would like sometime in the not too distant future that we schedule a work session to talk about all these rate structure, some of our requirements of contract signing, and then residential's going strong, was good, but what we talked about over a year ago has happened. This happened in the West Coast this week, is 5G internet services is coming, and I heard that T-Mobile and another partner is looking at rolling it out here in 19. So residential is going to be hitting the same competitive. We just need to be thinking and staying on top of that. So sometime, whatever works for you, but we should have a work session on this to rethink our strategy.
Okay.
Revise it or
Okay, just to hone it, I would say, because as you've noticed, the industry is ever evolving. And if we're going to be in it, we need to evolve with it and make certain decisions like we talked about. If you're going to do small business, you have to do it in a little bit of a different way than what we've done with enterprise level customers. And then talk about residential a little bit. We are very strong in the cord cutting type of niche, where folks just want to get completely away with the traditional providers. They don't want a Spectrum, they don't want an AT&T. They just want to cut the cord, they want to have a reliable internet connection and do all of their streaming over top devices, things like that. And the industry has noticed that that is a growing niche for the market. So that's where things are mostly headed. We're still pretty strong too with satellite customers who get their video through satellite, but they want a reliable internet service with us. Here's where our weakest area is, of course, is folks that are like, well, I want my video service, I can get traditional cable. Yeah, I've got phones, so I'm gonna have a landline, which that's really going away. And then internet bundled all together. And now you've seen Spectrum too. I'm sure you guys have noticed that they've launched a wireless service as well. They're an MVNO, which is a mobile virtual network operator. So through their deal with Verizon, they are now trying to bundle wireless services in there as well. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. Any other discussion there? I think that's my last slide. Okay.
Thanks, Chris. We're pretty excited about the 500 private home customer coming up in October. And things are going very well there. General manager report, I knew we had a long meeting, so I tried to keep it fairly brief. We talk about the weather because weather drives the power markets these days. The August temperatures were at average. We had kind of a hot beginning and a hot end and a mild middle of August. Wholesale megawatt sales and revenues were right at budget. Plant operated pretty well. Unit 1, who we've not been spending a lot of maintenance money on, only had 2 hours of forced outage during the month, and that was because a new employee accidentally bumped a breaker and tripped the unit. We've had that happen. We had a janitor do it with a trash bag several years back. Just part of life at power plant. Unit 2 had about 3 forced outage events throughout the month, but we were slightly higher than budget for generation for the month, so a good run at power production.
For this month, I'll be
Well, it's a pistol grip, so sticking up. Pardon?
good. See, this month, I'll be good.
Sept, I started to say February, I don't know where I got that. September has been a good month in the power market so far. And of course, you guys know that we did get the water rate bond license approved. We're out for bids. We had a very well-attended pre-bid meeting, and we expect that we'll get a number of good bids on that project, opening on the 16th of October.
What kind of comments you get on the schedule and what requirements?
It's going to take longer than 2 years. Which we were, I've always hedged whenever it's 2 years with an asterisk because it could take a little longer depending on weather. So what we've done is we're going to let the bidders, the base bid is tell us what it would cost to build it in 2 years. We're going to give them options to extend the construction time and tell us how much it'll save OMU if it takes 30 months or 36 months, and we'll evaluate that.
Did HDR develop the expected construction time? Is that?
Yeah, that was developed based on starting